Hello. So, thank you, Manoj, for putting us all here together on this. It's a very nice topic, and as I was exploring from the time that I spoke to her, I think it covers the whole range of architecture itself. And I had a small presentation, unfortunately, on our screen. A very brief presentation it was just to showcase how material, money, mindset, and special relations they've actually shaped humanity from the beginning of civilization. So when we think about stone house, primitive man making houses out of stone, maybe beautiful stone, maybe bamboo, maybe local wood, straw, whatever they had nearby, they used it to make their own houses, place to stay, place to shelter themselves from wild animals, the elements, rain and the sun and things like that. And architecture shaped us. And when we see different eras in architecture, um, material seems to be a very big part of it, and also the typology of the building also uh, what material is used and how it is used. So typology means if there is a palace and there is a house, there will be different kind of materials that will be used. For example, in India we have, since I'm working with Bangalore people, I'll just give one reference there. In the northeast, if you have the same bottle and dog system, Cobra system, what you call it, whatever, there are different places, different names are there. But if it is in a large one, it is with Burma wood, Burma teak wood, same technology, that's Burma wood. And the same technology used for a common man or a underprivileged person to be bamboo with bottle and dog bamboo. So the material usage also changes as per the economics part and the way the people. It's not always again like that. There are many materials which were used before, which was in between thought to be not very hip and modern and durable. Mud is one of them. But history has a different story to say because mud buildings have lasted more than 700 years, many of them. Concrete buildings won't last more than 40 to 70 years. Still, it is called the most reliable and material today. So that's the perception. And that's where the mindset thing comes. So when we talk about, and again we had, so we use the word Kajaria and we have Kalachava, using different kinds of materials because the kind of architecture Kalachava uses it needs sort of mechanization and it needs to use very different kinds of materials. And of course, which everyone probably would know, the so-called very modern building materials are very far from the one as we already know very much about. And so the mindset again there. And in all this, even in my bamboo sector, when we think bamboo say if you want to make a house, they want it at the cost of a bamboo tent, but they want the durability of a concrete house where they will spend 5,000, 10,000. There's another entry in bamboo buildings, the Bali bamboo buildings, which cost around 20 to 25,000 rupees per square feet for your information. And everyone wants to see that because you see them all over internet as Gopinath was talking. You have these very picture postcard photographs of bamboo houses, which are very unsuitable for habitation, very unsuitable for pocket, and very unsuitable for the climate where they stand. So again, it's again perception. But in all this, why we have this standardized has put up this whole thing together. And as I understand, when we talk about global warming, we are saying that from the construction sector is really so much of almost 30 to 40% in across the world. The carbon emissions are from this sector. And what is the description or definition of development? How many cubic meters or tons of concrete was poured in that country, and that's what is development. Now, when we look at this scenario, and why all this other, this thing for materials and things we are doing is, when you're doing a building, the material goes at one time in the building. It's at the time of the construction, and you can't change that for the life of the building. You can have different benevolent ways of using different kind of energy. Using energy is recurring, like lights and things like that. Sometimes it's solar, sometimes it's wind and all that. But the material which goes into the buildings, goes once, and that's all. And so one has to be very, very careful as to what material you use at the time of construction of the building, but you actually cannot change that. The second part is the money part. Now, when somebody comes to us, architects, for to make a building, if he is a young person, probably is taking a lot of loans, husband, wife together, to try to make a house for themselves, because banks are really running after you to take loans the moment you have a salary and you have a credit card, they say take a loan and get a house. You can own a house today. And so they come to you, and there's a lot of this thing. The market that we have, the job market, when the job will go, nobody knows. When they will be laid off, they don't know. So the amount of responsibility that the market has, and if it is an old person, old means boomers, you can say they are retired, and then they come after 60 years of working and getting transferred all over the country into different remote locations. They have got their pension and the pension amount with which they come to you and say, okay, can you make a house so that I can have a post-retirement good time? So the responsibility is a lot, and that's where the money part also comes in. And that right now till now, I mean, I just try to put another thing in here. We always talk about money in the bank. We don't talk about the money by putting some kind of material that we use in a building, and if it causes asthma to the person in the house, the hospital bills will be much, much higher. And that cost nobody sees. Nobody puts in, factors in the cost of a building. And then there's the environmental cost. We all know through COVID that what happened in the world. And though we had money in the bank, we did not get food to eat. We did not have, I mean, the whole world was brought was complete halt by one small virus, one tiny virus. And that can be repeatedly happening the way we are going still, because the normal everyone thought that change has not actually changed. And the last part in it is the mindset. We all have perception from childhood what a home, what a building, what a thing should feel like. And please mind the word feel like, not look like. Because look like is a very temporary perception. After a period and after a time when you come exhausted back from the office or a time of traffic, you don't look at the elevation of your building. You understand the perception inside how you feel your house. And I'm very sure if you have a huge red color wall inside your house, you will show something on the wall that will really jeopardize your mental balance. So this is the perception, and we, as I said, are taking of memories. I mean, we all thought, okay, मेरी नानी के घर में ये मालती का पेड़ था. I will put that flower in my house or something like that. Or there used to be a corner where I used to sit and as a child and look at the sky. Can I create that corner in my house? It is also about mindset and perception. And of course, again, it is a workspace. What kind of material should be? And if you say there is a modern, everyone will think, okay, there should be plastic, there should be this, there should be that. Nobody would think that you can actually work with a building which can be as close to nature like what you see in Shantiniketan. or places like that, where your mind is at rest, because if your mind is at rest, you are not at 100%, you are at 1000% of your efficiency. And as architects, we have a responsibility to give a building to the people for whom we designed, to do what they need to do in that particular space, whether it's a home, whether it's a building, whether it's a hospital, whether it's an office, whether it's a cultural center. It has to be that. And one last point that I just want to speak about is like architecture has to disappear. Architects have to disappear further. We are not supposed to be at the forefront of our buildings because we are making buildings for somebody to use it for some purpose. Not to say that so and so designed the building and so is a good building or something like that. And that's what is the so-called vernacular. Why I hate the term vernacular. And would say more environmentally more appropriate buildings. They disappear. They're not loud. The materials, they soothe you. They invite you. And that's what a building is supposed to be. And so these three, words that Komal has very nicely chosen, I think, almost describes the complete profession of architecture. So, with this background, I will invite each one of you. So, I will be putting the questions one by one, and each one of you can. So, we have 15 minutes for each question. So, you can respond about a minute, 2 minutes, like that, and we can go. So, the first question, I'm just quickly. Okay, so how do you navigate the three M's: mind, material, mind, and mindset in your architectural practice, especially if it is a difficult client? Is that what you say?
Hi, my name is Harshitha. I'm an architect from Sathya Consultants. So, if I were to speak of the kind of mindset that we have encountered in the recent past, I would definitely say that there are a lot more people who are seeking out to, let's say, an eco-friendly, ecological architecture. But this was not the case when the office started. So, my mentor, our principal architect, Sathya sir, has started this practice almost about 32 years ago. Back when this kind of awareness on ecological architecture was not really that high. So tackling the kind of mindsets of the homeowners and clients that we used to get was not really an easy task. But what stayed with us as a team, as an office or an eco-friendly ecological practice, was really trying to persevere in some concepts that we would try to essentially incorporate in all kinds of design. Primarily being a residential practice, we also have to sort of, like Neelam said, cater to what the owners have as a perception of their home. So that is a huge responsibility when it comes down to an architect. So from a perspective of the kind of materials that we use, they're more rooted, they're more eco-friendly and more natural. We have started construction with usage of mud block way back in the early 90s, from mud architecture to rammed earth walls, mud blocks, clay works, stone, a dozen types of roofing systems, about 4 to 5 different types of alternates when it comes to the foundation of a house. So there are a lot of alternates that we have explored as an office. So it really comes from an individual thought process of what we are doing and is it really ecological? Because as a firm, we also do believe that it is more about how we live rather than just how we build. Ecology can only be part of your entire being, not just as part of the architecture in general. So that's on the material front. When it comes to the money, I'm sure we do have our struggles. We do have that bit of convincing that needs to be done with every client. But what we try to put forth is really a sense of life cycle cost, how the building fares over time, what is the maintenance that could possibly go into the residence, and what is the familiarity factor, how does it respond to its immediate climate and its context. So these are some things that we try to work on. It's an ongoing process, but yeah, definitely something more rooted in ecological parameters, I would say. Thank you.
Hi, this is Balaji from SDEG. So we have a little different practice from Harshitha, but that's basically because of the kind of clientele we serve. So generally, we get inquiries through referrals or people who have researched us through web, and they already know what kind of projects we do. And it's not that we are against anything, but we are not typecasting, but that's the kind of clientele we have received as of now. But generally, a client when he comes to us, he has a notion of already something he has seen what we have done before. So he would be expecting something similar to that. So the first thing that comes to us is he thinking, right, is it the best possible approach for him to ask the same project reference, or if he has the budget to spend what we have done before, or the project that he's referring to. So whenever we need to start the design process with any client, we can't directly ask what's the budget. We get a little bit edgy and hesitant to share any details like that. And so that's the first thing that we need to understand what's the requirement, and we slowly build up to understand what's the kind of house or any other kind of space that he wants to get us built, whether it's a dense urban fabric or it's in outside the city, a farmhouse. So these factors matter. So beyond which we analyze, once we come to know whether he is a perfect fit for us or we are a perfect fit for him, then we move forward with all these parameters considered.
Hi, I'm Manoj, founder of Principal Architect of Architecture. Practice that started in the year 1996. We were three partners when we started our practice. We were two partners when we practice. We started very young, just out of college, for the sake that we didn't have much opportunities back then. Good offices, trying to do good work, or work that we believed in. So we just jumped into the whole kind of practice after getting out of college. It was a very interesting journey where we did not have any collateral. We had zero experience, and it was boom time, year 1996, and we go and ask work to people, and people said, "Show me work, and we work." And we were freshers, so there was no work to show. It was good in a way to learn that whole gamut of it. What happened by that is that we were very slow, and we built our own collateral. Collateral that's much more rooted in the whole thought process. It was a slow process where we discovered materials which were new age. Back then, our practice more used steel the way we express steel as an architectural element and not just a structural element. And even in terms of material detailing, a lot of thought had gone in back then. And slowly we were recognized for the kind of work that we did, and we started winning awards from the year 2000 to 2020 or so. We stopped applying for award. We are actually, I would say. So what we learned is that client comes with a lot of aspirations to you, and that's a lot of responsibility that I was talking about. And if you do not respect that responsibility, you are taking it to the false side. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you have to be conscious about what choice you're making, and the only way we find the best way to solve this three ends or many other complicated ways that we have to deal is educate. You educate the client, you take it through, you be transparent about what your thoughts are, and every time that we do, we have our own agenda, which is not necessarily told to the client, but we have our own agenda to achieve. That this is what we want to do, this to achieve that difference in your space or materiality or combination of all the layers that you are dealing with. So this agenda makes it kind of a data process to drive the project from scratch to finish. We all think that design is the thing about architecture, right? But the moment you finish the design in first 6 weeks or first 3 months or whatever, you take, it's only maybe 100%, but it becomes 10% because you build it. Focus then largely goes on how do you navigate this whole terrain of materiality and so much of. I remember those days in 95, 96, we did not have hardware. Okay, the hardware that we use so easy, we design one hardware, a simple thing like H handles and C handles, get them built and use them in projects. There are a lot of things that were very, very, I would say, not yet up to the mark in terms of the industry itself. Today we are blessed that we have very good quality materials. So coming from that background of understanding materiality from its scratch and how we can actually use it, was a great learning for us and a great collateral that we still carry forward. And we do look at materiality in terms of right from, let's say, other things to a stainless steel or a carbon steel. Everything is like really scanned through and appropriately chosen for projects. And it's your agenda that you propose this for the project. The client is very rarely so well aware of things that you want to choose. But you make the choices for him and you don't give him one choice. The moment you give him one choice, he says you're giving him an ego or you're giving him money that you could make or whatever that is. So the perception changes. So the fact that you laid out options that these are the things that will do well to the project that you're talking about makes a lot of difference. We get clients right from rural areas, small. We work in about 3 cities in India, and people from small towns come to us and say they want to build a house. Aspiration. And we're happy serving them because somebody from that small town comes down and says that he believes in your work and it kind of things he wants to do with us. So we're just finishing one house in a small town from Thiruvarur. You should see the quality of work that they are doing in small towns. It's amazing. It's like a clinical drawing that's actually transferred on the site. It's a pleasure to see the way concrete is done, a pleasure to see the way details are done. Every is actually accounted in drawing is transferred to site, which never happens in these urban fast cities. I mean, Bangalore is selling because it's Bangalore. They are selling nonsense in Bangalore. So the real rooted work is happening in rural cities, and I think that's the way you look at because architecture is not overnight. It cannot be overnight solution provider. There is no magic solution here. Every project is unique and it has all the premiums that have to be married well together. It's ever changing. We need to navigate it. That's very important.
Hello. Hello everyone. I'm Seema. I'm an architect and urban designer. Today I'm representing the RD College of Architecture. Okay. So, for a very brief intro, I think I spent the first decade or so of my life doing hardcore architectural practice and switched to an urban scale. Not like the problems here were any less, that I decided to switch scale and see larger problems, but that's what I do. So, first of all, I'm actually very happy to sit among a bunch of people who care very deeply for architecture because everything they say, I'm sure, is telling you that. So, my perspective on the conversation that Neelam just opened is I see two sides of this problem. In one, I'm a consultant and I work for somebody and meet a client and talk about materials and what they want to do, their aspiration. But a bigger part of my life is spent, I think, inspiring people to try new material, new design, work with new things. And I consciously have always seen a gap between encouraging students to try design with the latest of material and then sending them out and they discover no, a lot of practices are still as they were maybe a couple of decades ago. And that has always bothered me in some way. But I think navigating both the worlds is my way of asking how to be relevant, how to look at new materials, at the same time make it more rooted to the kind of work we do, the place we come from. Of course, I mean, most of you here, agree that it is material that's required for you to physically experience architecture. right? To go away from, leaving it on paper. It is material that gives you that physicality, that experience. As was just pointed out, clients are super aware today from across the world. World has shrunk. So you have access to everything now, and you can dream of having a house built like something in Spain. I think the trouble there is always being able to reason why India and its climate needs the kind of houses it does, and the life cycle of these materials, and why we design the way we do. That doesn't mean every client is ever going to agree with you, honestly. But that should never stop you from, getting in and seeing what's meaningful. Because change happens very slowly, but it does happen. That's my take and that's the reason why I navigate towards a perspective, honestly. And also, I think I completely understand that it's not about a building really, but it's about all the buildings collectively put together that make a city, and its spaces, and somewhere the collective impact of the type of materials we use on whether you experience the microclimate of a place, the kind of larger urban heat island Bangalore today has. That really comes from us and our work as architects. And I need to be very conscious about it when I advise somebody, then I think about it to design too. So, yeah, that's my bit.
Hello everybody, I'm Gopinath from House Architecture. Our practice is a little different from what everyone else has been describing. We have a commercial practice and we specialize in healthcare design and in hospitality design. So most of our clients are actually business owners. They come to us, like when Balaji said, he has difficulty in asking for a budget. For us, they come to us with a budget. Because it is a business, we do not directly interact with the end user in our designs. We are talking to a client who's actually coming in with the business. Like for example, when somebody comes to us to design a hospital, he knows what he wants, the scale of it and all of that is clear. So our primary goal is how do we integrate our creativity with their business? What kind of solutions do we provide for them? That is very important. So the initial discussion, how do we conceptualize? Initial discussion doesn't really start with material and all that. It starts with how do you put it together, what is your budget, what should we provide. Concept begins from that. So, and then ROI and all of that is important. So somewhere we do diverse from a pure architecture to provide money value. Money is something that is never taught in colleges, but in practice it becomes kind of important. So that's how we started. So say we do a hospital. Initially it's a very functional, like if you look at hospital and if you look at hospitality, they're different. Hospital is very functional. So when we go in, the initial thing is, people are afraid of design and they think design means money. They say a good design, how much will it cost is the next question. Especially when they invest in something and they're looking at, will we get a return in 5 years, ROI in 10 years? Those are terms that you will all get used to once you get into practice. So what happens is, somewhere as we practice, we realize, we started off with, this was for a chain of hospitals with eye care that we do all over South and we also do in the North. So when we initially started out, there was a lot of resistance for the budget of the project. Why do you want to spend? Why do you want to design in a particular way? But once you do the design, you see how do you do your circulation, what kind of, so a lot of our practice actually relates to how do we add value for the client. Material comes in later, but this part of it is what we actually address in the beginning. So after the first 2 projects for this first particular client, we look at monthly, how much have we made, or what is our turnover, and they realize good design is actually adding a lot of value to them. So now they come for good design. So that is the change that we're actually seeing in practice. So even like Manoj was talking about, designing small places is something that is we did a very small clinic kind of place in Tamil Nadu, in a place called Valliyur. Valliyur is known for, banana leaves is their basic business that people work with. So we made a very nice, cute design, good material, everything, it looks good, aesthetically good, it made a huge difference. from there, the way people react to it makes. So, how do we bring design into everyday life in a very subtle way? That is something that we actually concentrate on. Now, when it comes to the other important thing that I want to stress on in all of our work, especially in what we do, every day is important. Any drawing that is delayed, if you do not give it on time, there is a delay that causes something else. So we have to be very responsible and accountable in the kind of work that we do. So with material, now when we do healthcare, how do we address material? For us, the functional sensibility of the material is very important. Functionally, if you're designing a hospital, what do you use for your lobbies? What do you use for your IP rooms? What do you use for your, the sterile areas, your OTs, your ICUs, and all of that? That knowledge is very, very important. What do we use? How does that material behave? Very, very important. Aesthetics of the material is important, but so functionally, what kind of project are you doing? That is how you will decide the material. For example, we do, say you're doing an OT. You need a conductive flooring because you use a lot of material on and your equipments are very important, your medical equipments that come into it. How often can you clean it? Or how do you do that? How does the material behave? We even do material testing because how does iodine or there is one of those medicines which is very yellow, and how does it stain? How does so the quality of your material, the nature of your material. And with COVID, I think before COVID we were all not so conscious of a sterile environment. Now we are also conscious. So how what do we touch a surface? What is that doing? So the functionality of it. Now the other spectrum when we're doing hospitality projects, that is for the senses. Everyone wants to come, feel. See, in both these projects, we are not doing end user. We do not know. So there is no emotion of the end user that we are actually working with. But with hospitality, it is the wow factor, it is the aesthetic factor, the economic factor of it. All of this, like you rightly said, all three are married together. So if you look at a hotel project, it takes 10 years for somebody to redo the project. Like Neelam said about material, once you put in, you're not changing it. So for 10 years, your material has to sustain, it has to look good, it has to look new, otherwise your clients are not coming in. So that is the aspect that we'd like to focus on for this. Materials, again, you're talking about local materials and all that, but I feel geographies have changed now. We don't have borders. We want something from Germany, we want something from Italy, China, we're all just going. So how do we look at that? I think the panel should look at whether we should use, what we should use. So that's it.
Hi, I'm Gaurav from Gaurav Architects. So I think our focus as a practice is quite different from people. We are very focused at a larger level. We're looking at the economy a lot. We're looking at how everything is becoming fancy, how practice is basically becoming a bourgeois trade, how it's not crossing over, how, the structure, how costs in the cities are escalating, where almost 80% of the population can't own or don't have. So we are kind of questioning these things. We have a huge problem with how Instagram and aspirations have basically compressed into a JPEG, and flattened into a JPEG. So we are kind of going against the grain there to question all of this. Like again, in the city, we are not romantic at all. So we don't. I think the city is the most green thing there is. Every road is shared by 10,000 houses. Every pipe is shared by. So I don't have a romantic view of architecture in that sense. But we are also going into a highly feudal system. As corporations and as systems grow, architectures become a production job rather than an expression, an idea of space, an idea of experience. Materials for me, they're good until a point, but then they cross over and become highly problematic. When you romanticize it and it becomes texture paints and this and that and all of that, so we are completely away from it. We are asking the basic questions: is we make sure that our clients are not going to middlemen importing things. We rather go to the labor worker because the workers are disappearing. Okay, everyone's just becoming they're becoming Uber drivers. And this is a big issue for us. So we are kind of questioning how even the architects. I keep on telling the people who are working for me. I said architects have become glorified. If you see the education which is being imparted at the moment, they're glorified production people. Okay, there is no idea of. I think we're going so far away from art. First there was this idea that architecture was a thing of art and technology, but I think we're so far away from it today, where it's actually, I don't think they're going to come back with the economy and the scale. So very soon only builders will win. So these are things which we're doing. We are removing layers. We have projects where there is no flooring. So you cast the slab and it's perfect, 2 mm. In a country like India is where you need to share. You look at grills, every house spends 10-15 lakhs on grill. Just take that money, multiply it by the house. Imagine the amount of money we waste our money. Our cities are highly wasteful in terms of time, in terms of most of the real estate prices are because of incompetence and a lack of actual ability to do this thing rather than values diminishing. So we are a very critical practice looking at all of these things. Our architecture again is looking to deal with that, looking at experiences, looking at, and we are demystifying architecture. We're not worried about the big things. We are going to worry. We are going to question the clients. We're going to get rid of this whole idea of exclusivity, escapism, which is happening everywhere. And so we're going to try and we're going to ask the hard questions. So our idea of mindset is also questioning that. When someone comes into me, I say, if you know that the best time you're going to have is with your best friends on the terrace of a building, having maybe a old monk or something like that, then you don't need the nightclubs. You don't get mystified by all of this stuff, and that's when you become powerful as a person, as an architect, proposing to your clients, where you don't go and propose to get the project, you propose what you feel. And for us, I think that is our main aim in terms of the architecture.
Thank you. Yeah, very interesting mix of that. So that brings me to my second question. That some of you have already a little bit covered that. How do you navigate the 3 M's in terms of environmental sustainability? Because though the global warming word is being used even now, I don't think we are in the global warming era anymore. I think we are past the global sizzling era also, and it is now in global evaporation we have reached already. And people keep negating that, thinking that like a cat which drinks the milk and thinks that nobody is seeing it's like that. So how do you navigate this? And I think as we Instagram into they pack images of buildings which every client aspires for and tries to have it, maximum of the clients. And how do you navigate all this in terms of environmental sustainability?
Okay, so for us, when we look at sustainability as a principle itself, when it's for residential architecture mostly, so we have a certain, let's say it's an idea that's fivefold. So we look at it from a perspective of functionality of design, of longevity of design, of the rigidity or say stability of design itself, the kind of affordability that we're looking at, and also the beauty and the aesthetics of it. So when we speak of sustainability in a residential building, and these are the kind of factors we look at, there are a lot of different things that we need to discuss with the homeowner. When it comes to, let's say, the economical impact, like I think some of them were also mentioning, some of these materials, I could give a very basic example. Let's say a lower cost material necessarily need not be sustainable, right? So if we look at, let's say, a bag of cement, it is low cost, but it is not sustainable. So does it really help us from a longevity perspective? No, Whereas there are contradictions to this as well. We can say that stainless steel, for example, need not be a very sustainable material in its conception. It has higher embodied energy. But then because of the longevity of the material, the durability of the material, it does prove to be sustainable. So ideas of sustainability again come from a need of what we are today. And like ma'am rightly said, climate change is very real. We wish to believe it or not, it is something that is very real and something that everyone needs to speak about. And maybe we are just doing residences and it could be a small speck, but with that small effort that we try to bring in some kind of ecological impact. When we also speak about mindset from a sustainable perspective, we are since we deal with residences, we are catering to a perception of a home, a perception of what they feel is familiar. So, from a mindset perspective, it's not really difficult with what we do, but with the materials, I don't know if I should be saying this considering we're sitting here, but we do not promote usage of manufactured materials or anything that comes across the border, like Ma'am just said. So it's more rooted and it comes from a more context-specific idea. So sustainability is all of that to us.
Well, in our practice, I like to answer this in three parts. Sustainability is quite a vast topic, and that expands. You can't really gauge by what you're doing and how you're achieving zero carbon footprint building. It's very difficult unless projects like what Harshitha and Sathya is doing. But in our case, we take small conscious steps so that whenever we get a site, we see that the flora, fauna, vegetation is not touched, the contour is not touched, we retain the top layer of the soil. All these are conscious steps for the sustainability. That's what we are trying to do. And secondly, in large projects, we are getting into IGBC. Although these are all like marketing gimmicks, but the pointers that they have for getting credit score are very sensible. The person that has made is not just made it for marketing. Although we use it for marketing strategy to sell a lot of apartments or to get higher rents for commercial projects. For instance, they will say that don't source material beyond 200 kilometers of outer radius, which is quite sensible. And then they will say zero discharge of water. Whatever water falls on your site, everything should percolate, reuse, reserve, and then don't allow anything to go to a storm water drain. That's secondly. Thirdly, and we were very fortunate to design a project in far away from city where we're doing a small holiday home with mud blocks, wherein the mud blocks are made from the foundation that we have created, and everything else is very natural and built by the people staying around the site. So that was one of the biggest sustainable projects that we have achieved right now. But beyond that, being a mainstream commercial practice, there are all very small steps that we could take where the primary things are earth, water, and energy. We use them resourcefully, and materials that last longer, wherein nowadays we see all the interior projects that are with fancy objects and they don't age well. So we are conscious about choosing the materials that fits the project and the client's mindset. Beyond which, sometimes there is out of control that client sees some fancy thing abroad that he wants to bring in and place it in his living room or dining, whatever. But we have a larger control on how the project should feel and look like. With this, we try to maintain that sustainable concept.
We're discussing about sustainability. It's a topic of a three-day discussion, actually. Having said that, every architect is essentially required to do a sustainability work. It's the nature of the profession. You cannot shy away from it. It's a given that you're building capital systems. So this whole drama, the gimmick of calling green and painting cutting and cutting, things like that. It is a very capitalistic kind of environment that we're looking at. But as an architect, I don't think we should get carried out into those terrain. It is very important that you build sustainable buildings. Like I remember when the IGBC started way back in 2000, when we did our first IGBC with Bengaluru buildings. The consultant can actually evaluate the building that was already designed by us. And then let's rate this building and we'll see how we will build. There's a lot of planning there to know that. Okay, so it's not about maybe it helps for novices who don't understand practice very well to tick box the choice of material and choice of sustainability and things like that. But inherently, you must, as a practice or as a person, be very responsible that you are building a highly sustainable, whether it's choice of material, lifespan of the material, how it ages. So what we do in small scale to large scale projects is that we are local at the same time international. We wouldn't say that we cannot buy something in Germany. So what we do is we have an agenda that we say, okay, about 70-80% of the will come to me, which would mean that whatever we estimate from that place is used back into that area. We do a lot of education institutions. So we make sure that large campuses are net zero in all aspects, right from energy to water to how rainwater can percolate. So there's a lot of understanding that's required for the terrain, the geological, geomorphological properties of the site that you're dealing with, the contours, the terrain. So we have successfully finished multiple projects where we built a rainwater for the entire year, for drinking. And trust me, we just finished phase 1 of National University in Nagpur, where we created 2 lakes of 6 acres total on 60 acres of land. And the quality of water is so beautiful, it's clinically great water. So whenever I go to the site visit, I take about 3 times a day. It was so, something that you don't get in cities, you don't enjoy. So it's a very simple fundamental which one needs to follow. I want to roll back into the whole idea of what sustainability is about and why we are talking about sustainability. Okay, so our planet is about 4.3 billion years old and 3.6 billion years we've been living as a living space. And I'm sure many of you don't know, dinosaurs lived for 150 billion years. Okay, on the planet. We as Homo sapiens are about 1 billion years, and our documented history of mankind, where I would say the knowledge being transferred, is less than 3,000 years old. So can you imagine in the last 100 years the amount of damage we've done to the planet? One cannot even think of it. But the fact that we are recognizing and acknowledging that yes, we are damaging, it's a positive thing. That we will get solutions, we will find ways of solving them, we will find ways of mitigating them. Similar like the ozone problem that we had. Most of you may not know also about it, but it was one of the most complicated problems the world handled, and that's the only agreement on UN Charter was signed by all the countries. 216 countries signed. Only one document in the world was signed for using non-CFC. Okay, we don't have much ozone problem. So I'm sure there will be solutions that we'll find, and we'll come across them and get them right. So I want to pick on some ideas that he spoke about education being up to the mark, which is very true. We believe that we complain as a practice that we are not giving the required education. And we all studied and we got a paper called degree, that's all we got, and we went to the field and learned from the field. So today we expect the responsibility to shoulder onto the education system itself, and for which 10 practices and one such in brought together inside the college in Mysore. It's called Balaji architecture 10 years ago. So it was about making sure that we bridge the gap between profession and education, where we are looking at educating and empowering the skill set of a student, to ignite his mind into the art, architecture, not just science and buildability, but how to make it sustainable. And this year we launched another course on Masters in Sustainable Architecture. The first we started here, which we started syllabus, approved in the Manjunath Technology University. So it's about taking initiatives at all levels. It's not just about the practice, it's about getting involved in it and integrating into society, that even if 10 people come out of the school, make sensible architecture, educate further than their people, is what makes it sustainable. It's not about talking the sustainability part, very easy to do, because the thick box is very simple today. Okay, how do you make it net zero in the water? How do you make it net zero in the waste? How do you make it energy efficient in the solar? So those are tick boxes for commerciality. The actual tick boxes come in with the choice of material. How do you make it, fundamentals of orientation, fundamentals of principle of design? How do you make a building, passive in terms of ventilation, in terms of quality of light? There's so many things that architect has to do, which is never, written in those tick boxes. It's an architect's responsibility. So architect's responsibility that I make sure that quality of environment that I'm giving to the end user is appropriate. It's right there. And this responsibility kind of comes in when you recognize and ask the right questions. Most of us do not know how to ask the right questions. Whether it's with the client, or whether it's as a material, whether it's how the inventory is, or how much money you're spending on it. So I wouldn't say that I wouldn't spend 10 lakh rupees on something that's very expensive on a particular product. But I would say yes, it's worth it. You would spend on it. At the same time, I would stop the client from saying that, don't spend money there. It's not worth it. Let's spend it in the right place. So it's the choices that you keep navigating and making with you and your client. And I'm not saying it's a perfect practice that you get, but every decision that you make has a problem. And buildings that we design are with factor of safety of 1.5, and we design for 75 years as before, and they last only 102 years, which means that it's not a 5-year, 10-year horizon that you are saying that you are creating with. It's a very long-term aspect that you're going to get into the choice of material and when we started our practice, just one last thing I will just finish up. We never thought that projects that we built will get demolished. So to my surprise, in 30 years, we saw 4 of our projects which we ourselves had built and we were demolishing rebuilding. So we are now relooking at what is the end of cycle of building. When the building dies, what does it mean? It's something that we are constantly investigating.
I request everyone to read because we already have 3 minutes only are left and we have 2 more questions to go.
Sure. I'm just going to pick up on something Manoj said about the life cycle of material and building, and I'm going to argue that we have a lot more research than we ever did about the nature and type of materials now, and also the valid question of where do old buildings go to die? Seriously, where do they go? It's like out of sight, out of mind. So mostly in the city, you see buildings getting demolished. The city is remaking itself in front of our eyes. I mean, every day you see the city remaking itself. And every one of those buildings, when it gets demolished, where does it finally end up? And what are these materials that we invested in, built up? And I know a lot of conversation on can you reuse it, but none of this is mainstream. This is just 5 people somewhere reusing materials of a building that's dismantled. It's not a common practice. So to me, the first thing about rethinking materials is how do you make it mainstream and common? This idea that there is something called a material ecology, like the 200-kilometer radius conversation we did. So where do these materials come from? What is a larger life cycle? I'm not saying this with the agenda of saying let's just use these materials to kind of compromise on the quality of space. We're designing, not at all. I think the experience of the space, it's like almost saying material becoming immaterial in experience. That is something you cannot compromise on at all as a designer. But at the same time, to me, it's important to make it mainstream about what happens when a city remakes itself every decade or so. Like, where do these buildings go? What are we doing with them? A lot of conversation has happened on the idea of glass, per se, at least Bangalore itself. How we've gone on and on. I think from late 90s onwards, we moved towards looking at glass, and we are going back on a cycle of saying, let's not go there. But as someone who teaches and who I would argue that we encourage people in an academic institution, even though Gaurav is like, not so much, oh, we really do. We encourage people to actually try construction that's Adobe, try construction, hands-on, try these things. Honestly, it's not the answer for scale. I'll be very honest. If I have to look at density and if I really have to build, then we still don't have the sharpest answers of how to quickly build with these materials. Not there. I can do it at a smaller scale. I can try it for a residence. I can probably try it for something, not even a large apartment complex, to be really honest. So, and I agree with Manoj that yes, we have the responsibility of making sure that the life cycle of things is taken care of, energy cycles are maintained, but these I think don't have, can be mainstream, not with any guidelines like IGBC but just as simple as how the city writes its bylaws, how city writes its rules. You change that, you change, then we don't need a bunch of architects only to fight for this. It's not just our responsibility, it becomes the larger responsibility of the city itself in which we all design. And that's my take on this.
Okay, so for us, with the kind of scale of projects that we do, sustainability, we go to a client and say, okay, let us look at sustainable options. Initially, they are very good at it. They say, oh, we should, very enthusiastic. Then we drop the budgets and all that, and then they kind of draw back. So basically, when we want to make a building, the cost of sustainability, it is a very worthy cost, but how do you convince your client about it? So typically a sustainable building with the scale of buildings that we do, the cost goes up anywhere from 3% to 10% of building costs. How do you convince your client? So we've got some things which are negotiable, some things which are non-negotiable. So like if we start with, main thing is when we fix up our budgets, what is CapEx, what is OpEx? Now all of you would know what is CapEx is the initial part of investment for a building. OpEx is when you operate, what is the cost of the building? All from money or that perspective. So what happens, how do we use these materials? And so for example, people are very enthusiastic about OpEx, sustainable solutions for OpEx. But when we ask them to invest something, they are a little reluctant. So we look at, we do everything that Balaji was talking about with respect to site, respect to rainwater harvesting, how we control, we use the natural slopes, all of that is done. Now what we add to it is actually concentrate on the engineering aspect of the building. When we do a hospital, we are dealing with at least 50 kinds of services. What are we using there? What material are we using there? When do lifespan of the building, how do we use that? Like for example, air conditioning. Air conditioning is something which is not negotiable. We need it for our buildings. We need sterile environments and all of that. Air conditioning is a must. How do we do our air conditioning? That is very important. So we have very intelligent discussions with our consultant teams, with our clients. We put forth, should we go in for a VRF system? Should we go in for a chiller system? What is the advantage that you have? How long does that system actually last? So if we explain to our clients, like in a recent project that we're actually working on, should we do VRF or should we do a chiller? If you do a chiller system, you're all aware of it. I know you're all students and you just learn this. So if you do a chiller system, how long does it last? When do you need to replace it? What is the effect? What are your energy charges for it? How do you use it? So those kind of questions, a lot of times when we educate our clients, they are ready and acceptable. Like if you use a chiller system, you use the same energy and you can use that if you use a heat pump, you can use it for your hot water. So so that way a lot of times, architecture is not just the aesthetic. A lot of it is about how we function, what we use, etc. So the non-negotiables, like for example, water. Any project has an STP, has the dual piping system. You're all aware of what is the dual piping system. The water is always reused. So all of that. Those are the things that we actually concentrate in practice. We try to. Then what kind of materials? Where are you getting your materials from? What is the quality of the material? Is there lead in the paint that you use? That information, as long as we're informative and we consciously use material, the project works.
With sustainability, actually, I think we are very conscious as a practice practice that like how marginal we become as a profession, and we're also looking at agency like Gopinath and they are doing the Bamboo and things like that. These are architecture which are accessed when people don't have maybe money but they just have time, right? And they have a piece of land and agency becomes very important in terms of actually. I mean, for us to talk about sustainability, being privileged, maybe dealing with the first top 5% of the population, it seems a little frivolous to me at least, because there are bigger questions in terms of and are we the people to answer those? I think density needs to be looked at, urbanity needs to look at, efficiency needs to be looked at. But at the same point, efficiency doesn't mean cold cut. Like I'll give an example that she talked about a hospital. Why are hospitals so experientially scary? There are places where why have we gone so far away from what the core thing of a hospital is to recover mentally, go and recoup all of that. How have they become these places where we are terrified to be in? So we've also gone very far away from the simple things. A car, I remember, used to be like you need an AC, you need to pay extra. Tape recorder used to be a separate thing. Today, there now like this massager, there's this. I think we need to demystify. Like if you look at the richest countries in the world, they're going back to cycles. They're going back to renewable energy. I think the aspiration, what I see, especially in countries in developing world, is something. And as architects, I know our things get published, and we do have a response. And it is a trickle down. It is as we see it in the tier 2 cities, people doing false ceiling and like, okay, what is the false ceiling? Is it, like false ceiling has become a trend now. Now it's like first it used to be to hide the electrical pipes. Now it's just become a design. So we need to take away the layers. We need to simplify it. We need to have conversations where architecture is eventually a roof. Okay, now it rains a little bit, make the roof bigger or a wall. Like we really need to get back to the simpler things and demystify it. So I am the opposite. Our projects do all of the other stuff like we catch the rain, whatever. I wouldn't like to put that as the main intent. That is done, but I think we have a long way to go in terms of just changing perceptions, and I find that the hegemony of these aspirations hugely problematic in terms of sustainability.
Okay. So I think sustainability, I think, is one of the most abused words, I would rather say, from different sections of the people, the professionals, everybody. But if I have to very simply, architecture is sustainability. It encompasses sustainability by default. It does not have to be a separate word. Architecture is not just that. I think somehow these isms, cubism, this one, that one, prefix, suffix, these are all marketing words. I've always been. Somebody does something and they try to put an ism and something, archi that, archi this. These are all marketing words to make yourself stand apart from the others. I think your work should be standing apart rather than your words. And that's something like, you say, SOA words or something like that, sustainable, search optimized words, something like that, optimization, yeah. And then sustainability is like that. And that's why around 20, I started using the word simplicity rather than sustainability. I think simplicity somehow encompasses, because what you spoke about, it has to be inherent that you think about things for the public, society, client. So simplicity is not separate. It has to be inherent. And that is something which is, when we understand that, then everything falls into place, whether it's material, whether it's money, because if you say you have to be, and I think we had a subject on economics, I don't know whether it's have place. We had a subject of sociology also. So it was there, and I think I don't know whether it's still there in the college. Yeah, so these things are taught, but how much you take it? People take it much more from Google Baba and WhatsApp University rather than and all those kind of things rather than what is actually supposed to be told. You know, and as Manoj said, they have explored their way and they have found out and they have, but then you go background and has to be very strong. So when you are studying, that is something also very important that and the colleges also, I would rather say as colleges have the responsibility to, and I don't think many other colleges are in control of how their how the faculties are. You know, the management calls the shots depending on how many admissions they are supposed to take and all those kind of things. I'm sorry to speak in a public forum, and I'm not a very liked person actually by almost every sector. But I think I'm running out of my time, and so I just speak my mind, whether somebody likes it or somebody doesn't like. So I mean that's something which is very much. And sustainability is actually not just for the 5% people. I would rather say unsustainability actually is for 0.001% of people. And just because somebody uses bamboo or mud doesn't make a building again sustainable. Because if you get bamboo from South America, because they are straight and long and tall and raised, you are not sustainable by far by a long bamboo pole. So that's what has to be understood. And if you try to make your mud building so plastic, the outer surface, that it stops to breathe, you are not sustainable again. So appropriateness of material, appropriateness of economy, and appropriateness of even mindset. You have to respect the mindset that, so I mean, I think my practice is very defined and people know what kind of person I am. And I think not exactly defined, people think I am a bamboo architect, which I am not. Again, sustainability, I don't want to say that because I just said I don't use that word anymore. Earlier I used to say solar passive architecture, and I think then I said, okay, I'm just an architect. Rather, I think that defines much more. But even then, clients are there to come, and they first will say, मुझे तो बंद चाहिए, और उसके बाद halfway through the design, and they will say, नहीं, ये तो बहुत durable नहीं होगा, ये इधर हो जाएगा, and then they will go both ways. And I don't very much agree with you on sustainable buildings being budget heavy. No, they are not. If you design them well, I don't think they can cost the same or less, but definitely more, because I have been doing that for a long time, and it does work. So I'm sorry I disagree with you.
No, I just put in a point.
One second. Yeah, I think I allowed everyone to speak. What? That's the thing. So that way, and so that's how sustainability is like. It is ingrained. So when we talk about the new generation and new materials and to make them, I would like to know how much research grant has been put on mud or for bamboo or for this thing compared to concrete, compared to steel. Tell me. And you want it to perform the way, and you want it to be scaled up the way you have other things. You give me that money, I will show you how it can, because bamboo was the first material which could be fabricated in the whole, mankind. That is how it is. It's a very prefabricable material. But yeah, I mean, can you give that kind of thing? But no, because we still do not have. We have the other lorries who will shoot it down. So those things are there when it comes to material, and I've been facing for almost close to 3 decades those shooting downs on the projects we try to do. My projects, size came down from 10 lakh square feet to आप मुझे 1,000 square feet भी नहीं, एक gazebo बना के देखिए क्या bamboo का. It came down to that. Putting people in a silo that okay, you are a bamboo architect, so you do only bamboo and nothing else. So you get projects of that size, and you cannot do university. No. Jaising sir, there are many other people here. Sathya sir, there are many other people. They are able to do large projects. Let's talk about Lorry Baker. I think if anyone of you have seen the movie Uncommon Sense, he got a 4,000 square feet building and he was so happy. 4,000 square feet building, आजकल के बच्चे निकल के बनाते हैं उससे बड़ी building. And he was so very happy. I will be able to showcase what I have believed in all my life. Why is he or she not given that chance? Do you think brick buildings were not done before? There were palaces built, there were forts built with bricks. Why cannot? Why only cement concrete can build large buildings? No way. So we have to change that mindset in the perception that cement, and also in terms of durability. अपनी grandmother के grandmother का घर जाके देखो, and when you see a cement building concrete building in the vicinity, they will tell you 40 to 70 years से ज़्यादा. वो भी 70 बहुत high performance concrete can go to 70% or 70 years are like long way. 40 years. That's it. So the perception and the money again, like I said, money it doesn't work. Actually, you have to give the material the same amount of respect and dignity and opportunity for it to perform, and then things can have become different. So now that we have, I will combine two questions in the end in one because we do not have time. One valuable advice that you can give to the younger generation from your side.
I can only pass down an advice that was given to me. So, like ma'am said, watch some of these movies done by renowned people with common sense, by Lorry Baker, PD contractors' works to be studied for regionalism, how the Kanade brothers, there's a documentary done on their work and how they look at perception of spaces, and let's say Geoffrey Bauer's work. All of these are some things that we look at in terms of how architecture is learned. So that's what something that's inculcated in us, at least to look at. So that would be my advice too.
I'm still young, sitting inside my first employer, so young one giving an advice to another young architect. So don't consider these three parameters as a constraint why you have to design space or space making. Eventually you will not get this in the first initial years. You mature while you design a lot of projects. You get there after a few years, but don't use the creative side of the design process while managing these parameters. That's what I'm saying.
Being professional as well as social academics, it's a constant learning from both ends. I love to go to college and build so much energy. More than I'm sharing my skills, I'm actually learning from them. So that energy is very important to keep alive throughout your lifespan. Is one advice that I would like to give young architects and students. The second thing is that you need to ask the right questions. If you do not ask the right questions, you don't get answers. So it's important that you, go down and give you the answers right there. So are you being smarter than them is my question. Because the same access is available to your clients. How relevant are you going to be moving forward? So that's a bigger question. When I walk into a class, I remember the first time I got a chat GPT presentation. It took me about 3 minutes to catch up the 3 chat GPT presentation. I'm fine with AI. I'm fine with as long as it's a good knowledge that's coming, the right knowledge is coming. The problem with the current generation is the amount of junk that you get as a consumer. You do not know how to decipher what is right, what is wrong. You do not know to choose that what is said over here or what it feels like is appropriate for the purpose that you're going to use, whether it's cola that you consume or whether it is the bike that you drive or places that you visit. You never validate yourself against it. You go with the trend. So that's an issue that one needs to really look at. That everything is, I would say, what this generation believes they are entitled. It's not. You have to learn it. You have to be humble. You have to go back to the roots. Be grounded. That's when you will learn a lot more than what you will get from your internet or phone.
So let me add, this is not an advice. I work with young people all the time. So I would say that I think I see a lot of extremely bright minds who join architecture. And I would argue that some of the most intelligent people currently are, that includes you, who probably getting ready to become architects. So having said that, I'm sure with time, since we live in a distracted world, with time you will be able to find the depth and the breadth that you need to be part of this discipline. So give yourself the time. And we are that startup, as architects, and we are literally, that's what we are. And we are activists. Deep down, that's who you are, because you dream of changing the world. That is a dream that you never let go ever. You kind of hold on to it. And since the topic is about material, I would argue that for an architect, material, the word man used, which was simplicity, I'm just going to add to it and say honesty of, what is that material, how do you work with it, honesty. And finally transcending all that to look at this completely experiential, sensory, immaterial way of seeing these things is what we should always carry because if you're rooted and if you understand that centuries ago, even now in smaller towns, buildings are built bodily. Because you see people, you see the craft of making architecture. And I think what has gone away now, because we are so image driven, is that craft. It's not something you won't know how to work with. I'm sure you do somewhere in your minds. It's just reconnecting back to it, and you'll find that depth. And just be activists all the time in your head, and that's all there is to this. And I really believe that.
That's very wonderfully, inspirationally put. Architecture is a fantastic profession. It takes a lot out of you and it gives you a lot also. So are you prepared for that journey is what you need to ask yourself. It's tough, but it's very, very fulfilling. What does it require? Your skill set is very important. How do you work on yourself and your skills? It doesn't matter whether you're working in an office right now, you're a student, or you're just starting your journey. Your skill sets is what will be with you all along. How do you pay attention to detail? Your observation skills, what do you absorb? Things are there everywhere. The dialogue in your head is very, very important. I'm sure everybody has a dialogue that you do keep asking yourself. So if you do that, profession is very promising. Everything else what she said is wonderful. Applies wholeheartedly.
To the students, okay, so firstly, architecture aside, anything, absolutely anything is a reflection. That's it. That's what it is. So if you, and all the stuff that you like is done by passionate, all the stuff, the movies you watched are brave, the book you read, which inspires you, all the stuff which makes, is done by people who care about what they do. And it's a reflection of that. Okay, so the work is actually on yourself. The work is not out there. It's internal. Work here. Ask yourself honest questions. Have opinions. Stand by your opinions. I think this is, anything creative and temper your aspiration. That's something which I'm constantly saying again and again because I have seen these aspirations, like apparently 90% of the startups in India have failed because everyone wants to make $10 million. Give yourself time, build up your value. It is this immediate money thing is highly problematic. It's like Uber drivers. Everyone became an Uber driver. Now they are all stuck in dead-end jobs. They are anonymous. Okay, this new generation is heading that way. You guys are going to take flashy jobs which will not teach you anything, and then at 40, you'll be stuck. Okay, it's going to become a feudal world. So please derive your agency here, form yourselves. AI is coming, that's very important to do.
Okay, so since everyone has told about this, so I will just have, because I'm also in the panel. So, yeah. So, in my opinion, all the teachers that have been teaching you, take it in nicely and with an open mind. And I think that's very important. Visit a lot of practical sites happening. Follow it up. Shadow a project, shadow an architect which you think you would like to be like. That's one thing. And one very important aspect that we have forgotten in architecture, of what craft in architecture. Imagine if we do some 3 years of research and we say we get a doctorate, PhD. How about a mason or a carpenter who has been doing it for generations. How many creative material would you give to that person? Who has been using that material with his hand and which has been passing on the intelligence of the material to their mind and their body. Because that's how human body works. So work with lot of humility with the masons and carpenters and people who work on the sites. And I will tell you, your learning curve will be like shooting through the roof. And I do that every day, even now, because I think I have a lot to learn from them. And that is something which is, we call it recognition of prior learning of these people, which is completely absent from our education system. It should be there. So that is one thing. And when you're using materials and money mindset that we talked about, one mindset that always comes to my mind when I ask this question: when you're completely depressed, you are exhausted, where do you go? You go to a park. You don't go to a closed room, AC room, and all those kind of spaces. So think about this part when you're doing your architecture or you're doing design. How would you make a person happy and peaceful, and what he or she needs from you as an architect? I will open the forum now. I think we can pass on some mics. I'm hoping that people have questions, or you have understood everything nicely. There can be only two things. Anybody has a question?
Hi, good afternoon. I was listening to the forum and I have a question. I'm from Gayatri and Naman, and I have a question saying that to all the architects here, how would you reshape your design process in the future with the help of AI? Because that is what is in trend these days. So how would you cope up with all the trends in a person?
I'm not so much of an AI person. I can tell you this much that I sat in Boston in MIT in a workshop on what do you call it? Something where you do with rhino and all the animal software that are there. And at the end of it, the exercise was a 3 days workshop that we had to attend. And we did a shack for by the side of the sea. I'll out with that. Now I'll ask you a question: if you master that to a level where you know exactly what switches to put and what variables to actually put, you need to have a lot of experience, as we spoke about, 4 to 5 years of consistent, good working in a hardcore architecture firm on practice first. Then AI definitely is helpful to you. Otherwise, it will mislead you completely. And that's it. And that's what I will.
We have been get from day one. The very first drawing we did was we understand software and we do understand. We do it honestly because one thing you understand is computer is nothing but garbage in garbage. If you don't ask the right question, what will give you no answers? So don't think that it's just a tool. It's not a creator. We are mistaking AI to be a creator. If it becomes a creator, then you have a job. And just imagine that if you also end up selling toothpaste, that is also a small problem. And trust me, this is the only profession where the highest job solution you can get. You may go through pain and suffering and no money and things like that. But the joy at the end of finishing the project where it's occupied, when you go down and use using it is nothing that you can get on this planet. No profession can do it. Not even a doctor, you go to a doctor in pain, the sign that you get become joy. There is no difference between what we do and what others do. So don't think that AI will replace you. It will not. It will just be a tool. And the same thing was said when computers came in, architects lose their job. Same thing was said when BIM came in, and there's an architect lose job. Well, we use all those tools to slow down, actually, to make more information, to invest more time back into design. So we use it like a tool. What we should take, say, 4 days or 5 days to do a drawing, we do it in 3 hours today. Maybe 30 minutes tomorrow. But then the rest of the time is spent back into the project. That's the way we use issues.
Actually, there's one very misnomer thing. I think when they say CAD, they think it's computer aided design. It's not. It's computer aided drafting. I know this because I worked with the research process in 86 where there were 12 computers, 4 clauses in 1986. So I learned AutoCAD there, just by doing it. I have never had any classes. And when I moved to Bangalore in 1994, in fact, I taught many people how to do the AFC of computers and AutoCAD software way back at that time. So it's a computer aided drafting. And as like rightly said, it gives you much more time. The manual part of repetition all that can be cut down so much that you can concentrate much more on the design aspect of the project.
Yeah, so I think the thing is whether you work for it or it works for you.
I think I'm going to add and argue that the word creator currently, that word, is used very loosely and applies across various fields currently. I would genuinely ask someone to rethink what the word means. So if you're an architect and if you're saying I create spaces, then the fundamental act of creation needs to stay with you. You don't outsource that to another. Even if you think AI is going to be the same thing, okay? There is that conversation. I understand that, but the fundamental act of creation still needs to be with you because that's who you are. That's like literally saying I'm no longer a creator. I am not somebody who simply puts things, slaps things together. That's not my role or job. Or I wasn't trained for that. I was trained to create spaces where people find joy. So that still needs to be with me. And also, you can use AI for 3D printing. Sure, digital technology. But then, intent of why we're doing that still needs to be with us and not with that. So I can today, of course, take a silkworm, look at the way it feels a cocoon, feed that onto a computer and make a shell that I can design. Absolutely. Yet, why am I studying biomimetic forms? Intent is still with the architect. So you're still creating the space. So that's where the creative work is yours.
Any further questions?
Okay, so my question was related to how how clients usually need something from Italy or Spain, and how Pinterest and social media is a huge inspiration for clients. So how do you exactly bridge the gap between the client's aspirations and the architect's vision for the project, and how it's actually sustainable in our Indian climate? So how do you actually bridge this gap between the client and the architecture?
Well, I don't get that kind of client. I mean, I'm speaking about myself. And even if they come from Italy, they want the kind of architecture I do. Now, but in the beginning, you talk about Italy in India. If I said modern campus, they would say, okay, पहले दिखाओ कहाँ पे बना है. So एक grandmother वाला example मैं last 4-5 साल से ले रही हूँ. उसके पहले तो I had to do okay, किसी आर्किटेक्ट ने नहीं किया, कैसे दिखाना है? When I'm talking about 30 years ago. So, but your persistence and your listening will bring that kind of. But I have rejected many projects in my life, and very big projects, because I wanted to stay with what I believe in. And this belief I have had from my student life. It did not come in between or somewhere like that. I believe like that. So probably I have, or if they think they are valuable, they can be educated, and they understand, then it's a very good thing, then you have a very good client, because we need a partnership with the client and with even the executing agency, then only you can go get architecture is what I think. So we all have to be on the same page. If you can educate, it's fine. If I was not able to educate myself, I didn't do the job. Okay, so yeah, we'll try to, I think time is up and we're taking quite a lot of time. And all of you have been very patient listeners. Thank you so much. And I thank all the panelists. I think they really gave a lot of, impromptu. That's why I kept the questions very simple, so that everyone can interpret in their own way according to the practice that they do. And I think it was a very good mix of different kinds of ideas and different kind of ideas that can make an ecosystem. The ecosystem is complete only when everyone comes from across and it's a very honest what they believe in. And I think that's very we have right discussion. Yeah, and true to the heart. Thank you so much and thank you so much.